Joining us now is John Lancione. John, I want to thank you for coming in
Oh,
and spending some
absolutely.
time
Sure.
with us.
Sure.
So, tell me a little bit about your backstory, your history. I understand you're retired.
I retired from the Army quite some time ago, and now I'm just retired and enjoying it in Oro Valley, down by Tucson.
Southern Arizona, right?
I've been down in the Tucson area since 2001.
Okay, so retired from the Army, officer.
I was an officer, I was a helicopter pilot and a paratrooper.
Very cool, very cool. But then you went into law enforcement.
I started in that in the Dallas Police Department and moved from Dallas Police Department into corrections. I moved to New Hampshire because of an illness in the family and worked in corrections up there as a corrections officer, counselor, case manager, drug and alcohol counselor. And from there, moved down to, let me see, it was 2001 I moved to Tucson, but it wasn't until 2004 I joined the Department of Corrections here with the state. And I worked there for 4 years until I just retired. Not from the state, but just retired.
What'd you do at the Department of Corrections in the state of Arizona?
Well, I worked in what was known as the level 4. The hard lockdown is level 5.
Okay.
One below that is level 4.
Right.
And in the facility we had, 3/4 of the inmates were illegal immigrants. They were put in together. They were segregated as they needed to be for many, many reasons because
Right.
of their level of custody. We were that level of custody unit,
Right.
and 2, because of the language situation.
All right.
Then we also had a section that was hard lockdown, which was maximum custody. And then we had another section that was all California Serenos, which were a separate and distinct group in themselves.
Oh yeah, yeah. Southern Gang.
Yeah.
Right. So, coming up to the what's going on in Arizona right now, the politics. What's your viewpoint? What do you see going on with, say for example, what's going on in Tent City, the pink underwear, stuff like that? What's your viewpoint on that?
Nothing, when I heard that, nothing gave me a greater impression of Joe Arpaio than the pink underwear. Because one, I think it's abusive. 2, it's humiliating.
Absolutely.
And you're putting pink underwear on people, putting pink underwear on people that have not even been to court, haven't been tried. They're there on pretrial confinement and they're being treated like that. And what's the purpose of it?
It's humiliation.
It's like the thing I heard about generating electricity for the televisions on stationary bikes. You know, like those old
Right,
Second
right.
World War generators
Right.
they had. Yeah, come on.
So yeah, you're not helping the cause there. You're just making you're pissing people off more and more and more. And like you said earlier, Rule 1, Rule 2 in the corrections. Say that again for us.
Well, what we had talked about earlier
Yes.
was Rule 1 is security
Right.
in any corrections facility,
Right.
any jail or prison. Rule 2 is unofficial, don't hassle the inmates. And if you don't hassle the inmates, Rule 1 is a lot easier.
Absolutely.
You're going to have a lot less problems. And I think that there's several more things that I think is abusive. Tent City and 160 way up here in Phoenix. I mean, you go up into the teens. So 113-degree weather in a tent city. I think that's abusive. To me, one of the most abusive things is only feeding them 2 meals a day. When you're in heat like that, your body expends a lot of
yeah,
energy, and you would need 3 meals, but he's reduced it down to 2 meals
That's
a day.
food and liquids. I understand is rationed also, right?
Well, even
From what I understand.
even down in Tucson, we had outside work details, and we had to keep them hydrated.
You
But
have
we had
to, but
water there for them all the time.
all right. But you weren't being cruel to them, unlike Tent City's. Like here's a half a cup of water or something.
No, we also didn't house them out in that environment.
Right.
They were housed
Yeah.
in swamp coolers, but they were
Indoors.
housed in cool air indoors,
Mm-hmm.
and they'd work outside, and we wouldn't go overboard about it either. Prison's a different system than a jail, though. A jail is very chaotic. Give you an example. When you're first booked in, you go into a holding tank until you're assigned, either released on your own recognizance, like somebody on jail traffic or something like that,
All right.
or a petty thing like shoplifting under 20 bucks.
Mm-hmm.
But if you're in there and you're going to spend a couple days, like for DUI or something like that,
Right.
you're put into a holding tank with who knows what.
Right.
And I've always felt that was abusive to the new person,
Right.
the person first time in jail, bad checks or something like that, to put them in a holding tank without having classified anybody to their level of security needed with felony pretrial inmates.
Well, it's got to be fairly dangerous, right?
It is. Jails are very dangerous and chaotic. Now, prisons have serious things happen. I mean, we've had the yard I worked on, Cimarron in Tucson. We've had murders, we've had suicides, but you're dealing with a classification of inmates that is at such a level,
Right.
you've got to keep them in that lockdown situation. In a situation that's safe both for the officers and the inmates, because you can't let something happen to the inmate. I mean, these are rare occurrences, a murder.
Right.
A suicide is a very rare occurrence. But someone getting punched in the face is not a rare occurrence. You know, they get into fist fights all the time.
Right.
And you got to separate them. But in jails, and especially, I don't understand this idea of using pretrial inmates, especially misdemeanor pretrial inmates, on these work details that are used to essentially by our PIO to punish
Right.
already convicted inmates.
Mm-hmm.
Had a friend. She was incarcerated up there for a couple months waiting trial. She never went to trial. She worked 6 hours a day in the laundry and was treated the same as the inmates that had been convicted, never been to trial. And that brings up another thing too. I'm not blaming the entire system for arresting people and not bringing them to trial.
Mm-hmm.
But when that happens, it kind of ruins the job opportunities later on, because a lot of job applications say, well, you know, were you arrested for anything? And what was it? It doesn't say were you convicted.
Right. Oh, right.
So this follows you around. And then you've interrupted, 3 or 4 months of someone's life, and they don't have a job anymore.
Right.
And maybe can't get the job back because of the incarceration.
Absolutely, that happens all the time.
Yeah.
It's very hard. If you're honest and you fill out your application correctly, you know, or even if you don't, and they run it, you know,
Right.
they find it. How are you going to get work?
When you're caught up in the criminal justice system, you are in for the hassle of your life.